Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. It is presented by Gatorade on this Friday. Truly great to have you with us. I'm Dave Revsing. Got some baseball and softball to get to as well. We'll get you ready for the weekend. But it was the semifinals in lacrosse on both the men's and the women's side. That is our big story. On the men's side, Michigan rallied from 6-1 down to take down top seed Johns Hopkins 10-7. First L to a conference foe this year for the Blue Jays, who were held scoreless for 22 minutes. Michigan gets Penn State, which crushed Maryland 19-9. Just the Nittany Lions' second win in 43 all-time meetings against the Terps. So it will be Michigan and Penn State for the title Saturday night. Gets going at 8 p.m. Eastern time here on the Big Ten Network. Both programs looking for their second ever conference crown. As for the women, defending national champ number 1 Northwestern got a major scare from Johns Hopkins before pulling out a 13-12 win. Cass got 5 goals from Madison Taylor. They will battle Penn State, which made it to the title game for the first time since 2018 with a dominant 17-8 win over Rutgers. They are now 1 win away from their first conference title since 2015, and to get it, they will need to knock off a Northwestern team they beat earlier this season. That game was in State College. This one in Evanston, where the Cats have won 42 in a row. Gets going at 5:30 Eastern tomorrow here on the network. Mark Dixon joining us now to break down all of the lacrosse action from Thursday. Mark, let's start with the women and Northwestern. They got a major scare from Johns Hopkins. Actually trailed the match in the third quarter before pulling it out. What did you take from Northwestern's narrow escape?
That this tournament can be won by anybody. I think Northwestern built a nice, comfortable lead. Johns Hopkins played down the stretch without 2 of their better offensive players, in Bailey Cheatham and Ashley Mackin. Cheatham had 2 yellow cards, which disqualified her from the game, and Mackin got injured. But Northwestern weathered the storm. They found a way to get the job done. They defended their home turf, where they have been absolutely incredible over the last few years. Madison Taylor was her usual offensive self, and Northwestern pulls out the narrow home victory. You know, this is the time of year. It really doesn't matter how you win or how much you win by, just as long as you win. And the Wildcats win. They advance to another championship game to look for another conference tournament championship this weekend.
Yeah, in that title game for the third time in the last 4 years. They will take on Penn State, which looked just great against Rutgers. They've now won 5 of their last 6. It feels to me, Mark, like this Penn State team is playing with unbelievable confidence.
They really are. And when you look at Rutgers, that was a team that scored a landmark victory, the upset over Maryland in the quarterfinals. So there's one of 2 ways to think about it. You know, Rutgers has a ton of momentum coming in, or maybe they emptied the tank against the Terps. But what I loved about Penn State's effort was they worried about themselves. They didn't worry about anything else. They went out, they took care of business. It was a dominant performance. It was a game that was delayed in the beginning and then throughout the game because of weather, but they kept their eyes on the prize. They stayed focused. They didn't alter from their game plan, and they're now playing in a conference championship game after a couple of lean years in Happy Valley. After being in the national semifinals a couple times, they came back to the pack a little bit, but to make it to this Big Ten championship game, that is a monumental accomplishment for Missy Doherty and her Nittany Lions.
Well, I mentioned earlier, these 2 teams have played this year already, and Penn State won. Now, that game was in State College, this one in Evanston. You mentioned how great Northwestern has been at home, but what would it take for Penn State to get a sweep of the Wildcats and win a Big Ten title on Saturday?
They have to play the full complement. They have to play the full 60 minutes. We've seen the penchant for Northwestern to give up leads, as they did against Johns Hopkins, but found a way to win in the end. I think Penn State just has to realize and embrace the role of the underdog, that they're going to go in, even though they won that first game in the regular season. Madison Taylor in the post-game interview was asked, you know, what does it mean to play potentially Penn State in the championship game? And you could just see a little sneer saying, we would love to get that revenge. So that's where Northwestern's mind is. Penn State mentally, They just got to think, hey, we're in the Big Ten championship. It is an automatic qualifier for the NCAAs. It probably means a higher seed. Let's just go out. It doesn't matter if we're playing in Evanston. It doesn't matter if we're playing in State College. It doesn't matter if we're playing in the parking lot of a local shopping mall. Let's just go out. Let's just play our brand of lacrosse and let's get the win.
Well, that is what they did when they played in State College. It was their first win over a number one team since 2005. Cats are number one again. We'll see if they can do it twice in one season. All right, let's shift our attention to the men, and let's start with Michigan knocking off the top seed in Johns Hopkins, who had been just great this year. A fabulous defensive effort, Mark.
They were phenomenal. And when you look at this game, Dave, it was 6-1 early. Michigan was down. Kevin Connery calls a timeout. They come out of the timeout. Mikey Bain, Michigan's best player, goes and scores their second goal, and they did not look back. They were dominant from that point on in this lacrosse game. And you have to give their defense a ton of credit. I thought Hunter Taylor in the goal was terrific. Their short stick defensive midfielders, Bo Pedersen, amongst the leaders, really neutralized that Hopkins midfield. And they made Hopkins star attackman Jacob Angelis, a second team All Big Ten selection, look very average. I haven't seen Angelis struggle in a game like that, like he did last night, in a very, very long time. So this is a Michigan team. It's so, I'm just going to use the word, it's weird. They were the fourth seed last year, won the quarterfinals against Ohio State, went into Baltimore, knocked off the number one team in Penn State to go to the championship game. This year, beat Ohio State again, knock off the number one, albeit in a different location and a different team in Johns Hopkins, but they're in the same position they were last year. Refuse to lose, win the Big Ten tournament, and get the automatic qualifier for the NCAAs.
Yeah, as you said, won it as the 4 seed a year ago. They'll try to do it again this year. And in order to do that, they will have to beat Penn State. And it's interesting, we had you on Wednesday, and we were talking about the one-sided history between Penn State and Maryland. It's overwhelming, and yet you said to me, I'm not sure Penn State isn't the favorite in this game. And were you ever right, Mark?
They've now doubled their all-time win total against Maryland in men's lacrosse with their second victory. And from start to finish, this was as dominant a performance as you're going to witness. Penn State was fast out of the gates, playing loose. But, hey, we've seen this story before, in particular back in March in State College when the Nittany Lions raced out to a 6-2 lead. You know, the game was tempered a little bit by a bad injury to Braden Erksa, a Maryland player who had to be carted off the field. And so that can level set you in a negative way. You could, be affected by that in a mental way of taking your foot off the gas. But Penn State, to their credit, withstood a Maryland run of 3 or 4 goals that they pieced together to cut the lead down to 6 at that time. And then Penn State had the answer. They learned their lessons from the past against Maryland and just got the job done. So an absolutely dominating performance. The offense was terrific. They faced off very, very well against Luke Weirman. So an all-around terrific effort by Penn State.
Second straight year, the top 2 seeds have been knocked out before the title game. And so now we get Penn State and Michigan for the championship. The Nittany Lions won handily when they played a few weeks ago in State College. Obviously a neutral site game here in Columbus. What are you watching in this one?
There's a couple of things. Firstly, in that regular season meeting, Jack Frassion had a career-high 19 saves against Michigan. And in the 3 conference losses Michigan suffered this year, all of their opponents' goalies played out of their minds. So Michigan's going to have to shoot really, really well. I think Justin Wheatfeld at the faceoff dot for the Wolverines is going to have to be really, really good. He was in the first meeting. In addition, Penn State was 23 out of 31 on clears, a team that clears at a success rate of 88%. I'm not a math major, Dave, but I know that doesn't equal up to 88%, 23 out of 31. You can't have that many turnovers, that many failed clears if you're Penn State. This will be a terrific game. You've got a Nittany Lion team that I think has put themselves in a position, if they win this game, to possibly be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament and get a home game. This is a Michigan team that doesn't want to hear anything about at-large bid. They want to win this championship. They have the refuse to lose mantra. and they want to win that automatic qualifier for a second year in a row to guarantee them a spot in the big dance.
It should be fun. A great day of lacrosse ahead tomorrow here on the Big Ten Network. Looking forward to your call in that one. Thanks a lot, Mark. Appreciate your time. Have fun.
You bet. Thanks, Dave.
So much more to come on the show. We're talking hoop schedules with Rafael Davis, plus some quick thoughts on the conference's top teams as the rosters start to settle in. But next, we're heading to the Pacific Northwest. Howard Griffith gets us set for the Washington spring game, plus thoughts on some other big spring storylines. This is Big Ten Today. Our big stat is brought to you by Gatorade. Washington, one of 4 teams set to join the Big Ten in early August, and they come in on a historic football high. The Huskies coming off a number 2 finish in the AP poll after falling to Michigan in the national championship game at ties for their highest ever AP finish. And when a team is that good, our philosophy historically here at the network has been, let's get Howard Griffith on the case to tell us exactly what's going on, and that's where we find him. He is in Seattle, going to be covering the Washington spring game, which is tonight.
Yeah.
Howard, we talk about that number 2 finish. This is a very different looking team than that team that took the field against Michigan. I mean, it's really staggering, right? We're talking about 20 starters gone from that team. Kalen DeBoer has obviously moved on to Alabama. You got Jed Fish as the new head coach. Give us a sense, in being around this program now, of how Fish is trying to put his imprint on Washington football.
Well, I think one of the biggest things when you initially look at it is it's not broken. What's here in Washington is not broken at all. They just need to rebuild, continue to build the roster the way Jed Fish wants to build it and implement his plan with his coaching staff. And we're going to get an opportunity to see that tonight of what they're going to do. Now, listen, Reverend, you know coaches, right? They never want to show everything in a spring game, particularly when they've gone on to a new place like we have here in Washington with Coach Fish. So I'm pretty sure he's going to keep things very vanilla. But I really want to see the athleticism with the guys outside. They lost a lot. We talked about that. I'm also interested in when you start to talk about coming into the Big Ten, what does the line of scrimmage look like? Because there's no doubt that they have the athletes outside. We just don't necessarily know all the names right now. They have the talent out there, but we need to know what's going to happen in the trenches on the offense and defensive lines.
So that was one of the big questions for me. I mean, we talked a lot about in the build-up to that national championship game last year, how good that offensive line had been all year. They won the Joe Moore Award. That whole group is gone, Howard. I mean, again, virtually everyone is gone in terms of the starters, so it's not unique to the offensive line. But what is the coaching staff saying to you about, kind of that replacing that group?
Well, I think it's going to take time, right? But like offensive lines, it takes time. You're going to have to build that chemistry. So it's going to take them, into the season before I think they are really ready to hit the ground running to get to the point where they were last year. I don't think necessarily they're going to be playing at that level because they still have to build there. They still have to get the right players in to make sure they can execute the game plan the way they have to. But I think it's going to be a steady build. And Coach Fish has done an unbelievable job everywhere he's been as far as developing offenses. They've really turned out well. So I don't expect anything to change now that he's taken over here in Washington.
Storyline-wise, aside from the lines of scrimmage, I mean, Will Rogers coming in at quarterback, a record-setting QB from the SEC. I assume that's something you'll be watching. What are the kind of the biggest things that are on your checklist to watch here tonight?
Yeah, for me, it goes back, and we talked about this a little bit, what's happening at the line of scrimmage, offensively, defensively. That's a big test because not necessarily when you talk about schemes, you can hide schemes. So I don't expect to see a lot of things scheme-wise, but the toughness in the trenches you'll be able to see. The willingness to want to be able to go out and tackle him at the point of attack, those are some of the things you want to see. And again, I don't expect them to be really banging and trying to take guys to the ground all the time, but you want to see what kind of athleticism is out there and just how they're adapting to the system and how quickly are they able to implement everything. How much do they still need to add over the summer versus what they've been able to put in during spring ball?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting balancing act. I mean, when you have a new coaching staff and all new personnel, I do think like kind of that, hey, how much do we show in a spring game versus, hey, this could be a valuable day for us to learn a lot about our team. And you kind of have to make that decision when the public is there watching you. Let's talk about the team that Washington played in the national championship game in Michigan. It hasn't been quite as dramatic in terms of the personnel turnover in Ann Arbor, but as we know, Jim Harbaugh's moved on to the NFL. Sharon Moore, the new head coach, he lost 13 players to the NFL draft. Their spring is done. What were your biggest takeaways from the Wolverines?
Listen, I think one of the things that's happened, I think is more behind the scenes, because there's a system that's been put in place there that Jim Harbaugh has put in place. And I don't expect them, and it didn't look like they were getting far away from that. They know what the expectation is. Now, listen, they're not as talented as they were last year or even the year before. They're having to replace JJ, but the way they practiced was still crisp. You know, the coaches were out there doing what they needed to do. One of the things I had a chance to observe was Coach Moore. He was kind of really just being the CEO type of a head coach, kind of moving around in the spring, allowing his coaches to really get their feet wet and really coaching their positions, because they're having to replace coaches too. So it's a new staff, but it seems younger, right? And I think when you talk about Coach Moore and his ability to really tap in and press all the right buttons, I think that's where his focus has been all spring, to be able to do that. And again, not as talented, but the system is in place and they haven't gotten away from that. I expect them to continue to play at a very high level. I don't think there will be substantial drop off, but I don't know if they're talented enough to be where they were last year, because they've lost so much. They've got a lot to pick up, but I think the system is there. And I think that's the biggest part of it. They're not going to get away from that. They understand what winning is about. There's a culture that's been put in place, the overused word culture, but you could really watch them. As I watched them this spring, they really moved around, had an understanding for what they wanted to do and try to accomplish. So this is going to be a fun team to watch. Again, not as talented as they've been in the past, but I think they're still going to be able to have a lot of success this year.
Yeah, interested to see what that offense looks like in particular. It felt like that was a little bit of a work in progress as we watched them in the spring game, so we will see. They, of course, played for the championship last year, for the national championship. Ohio State has aspirations to do the same thing this year, Howard. It felt to me last year, and you and I talked a lot about this, like ultimately what kept them out of the national championship game, what kept them out of the playoff, maybe more generally, was offensive line and quarterback weren't quite good enough. And so to me, 2 points of emphasis. Like when you watch them this spring, what do you think of those areas?
They still have to solidify what's happening on the right side of that offensive line. That's going to continue to be a storyline. The quarterback situation, I don't get really that concerned about it. I think they'll be able to work that out. When I was there, it wasn't great that particular day, but you could see the talent was there. And quite frankly, Rever, this may be as talented a team as we've seen since we've been covering Ohio State. And remember, this is a team that in the offseason has literally pushed everything to the middle of the table and are going after our national title, and they are not shy about it. When you look at the seniors, the guys that decided to come back who had draft eligibility, could go to the draft, came back, there is a really sense of, we know why we are here right now. There's one thing that we're trying to win, and that's not just the Big Ten, but a national title. And as we know, just because you may not win the Big Ten, you can be in the race. But I think this is a team that's loaded. When you talk about a 12-team playoff, they are built. They are deep at a lot of positions. And this is a really, really talented team. So if the quarterback situation works itself out, this is going to be a hard team to beat, because without a doubt, of the teams that I've seen this spring, it's not close to the talent level that they've had. And we've watched them recruit. We know what they've done in that area, and they continue to build on that with the transfer portal. This is a loaded football team, and I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do this year.
And they have a quarterback guru running the offense now in Chip Kelly, who, of course, came over from UCLA, left his head coaching position at UCLA to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Deshaun Foster takes over for him. Obviously, UCLA, one of those schools that's going to be joining the Big Ten. What do you think about this transition that's going on now in Westwood?
You know, I think the transition is perfect timing. And obviously, this is going to be new for all of us here at the Big Ten Network. But one of the things that there was a lot of buzz about was there really wasn't a lot of recruiting. It wasn't heavy recruiting as far as offers being thrown out there, but the enthusiasm about this program. They had a Friday Night Lights that they just raved about the week before I saw them in their spring showcase. And then when I went out and saw the spring showcase, it was at the Rose Bowl, which was something that was totally different for UCLA. And just the enthusiasm around the program right now is at an all-time high, going back to when Coach Foster was there as a player. And it's just not about him as the head coach. You look at Eric Bieniemy at the offensive coordinator position, who has been there and spent some time when they were rolling at UCLA. So I just think the enthusiasm, the way the community seems to be embracing them is a storyline that we have to continue to watch. When you look at them on the field, they are talented. They are long. You look at some of these corners that are 6'2", 6'3", and the wide receivers, they have length. It's just a matter of the game, again, as we look at the teams that are coming in from the Pac-12, that it's going to be about the line of scrimmage. And I think there's still a lot of work to do there, but I think they recognize that. But this is a team that wants to be hard-nosed. And, oh, by the way, Rever,
yes,
they use and are not afraid to use a fullback. So I'm going to be watching them this year and being real fired up about this program since they've got a fullback in the offense.
This explains your enthusiasm for Bruins football. But no, I was out there a few weeks ago as well, spent some time with Deshaun. It's obvious there's a palpable buzz around this program. Hey, Howard, enjoy Seattle. I expect you to come back highly caffeinated and listening to grunge music. Anything less, I'd be disappointed.
I've got to get some torn jeans and some flip-flops and things like that, and I'm going to be all good.
All right, my friend. Enjoy it tonight. Good to talk to you.
All right. See you guys soon.
Up next, it is Hoops time with Rafael Davis. Got some schedules to dissect, some insights to glean. A lot to talk about straight ahead. Back on Big Ten today. On Wednesday, the conference announced the men's basketball conference opponents for next season. Quick reminder of how this is going to work in the 18-team format. Every team in the conference will have 3 opponents they play twice. They play everyone else once. In addition to the 2 plays on Wednesday, we also got a list of the home and away matchups for each of the single-play opponents. As promised, Rafael Davis is here. He has broken all of this down, and we are going to run through it here over the next 20 minutes or so and run through as much of these schedules as we can. Let's start with Purdue. They played the national championship game. I think they deserve to be mentioned first. And so the 2 plays for Purdue are Indiana, Michigan, and Rutgers. That is not an easy draw. Obviously, Zach Edey's gone, but you have 6 of the top 8 scorers returning. Lance Jones, the other one who's gone. Haven't done much of anything. Haven't done anything technically in the portal. They have a good freshman class coming in, though. What do you think here, Rafael?
You getting Brandon Smith back, Fletcher Lawyer. They're going to be juniors now. You look at Trey Kaufman-Wren. They're a team. They're replacing Zach Edey. One guy does not replace the player of a magnitude of a Zach Edey. It's going to be a collective effort. I can remember when Coach Painter was going through that season after Carson Edwards left, and all of those guys were looking around that locker room. I'm going to be that next guy. He tells them all, it's going to be none of you. We're going to all do this together. You look at the freshman class they're bringing in, 6 freshmen coming in the season, 2 of them 7-footers. They're going to have the talent on the roster, but it's going to be about, can Brandon Smith make another jump? Can he continue to play like an All-American without Zach Edey? Can Fletcher Lawyer make a jump and not just be a standstill shooter or coming off of screens? Can he develop the ball skills and play downhill? But I think what we saw at Trey Kaufman-Wren in the NCAA tournament when they were going to him time after time, that's going to be the strategy. They're going to feed Trey Kaufman-Wren on the block. They're going to have Caleb First down there with him, Will Berg. But I expect business as usual for the Boilermakers. Again, one more season, Coach Painter is doing it his way, not caring about the transfer portal. And also, you think about coming into this year, having UCLA come back to Purdue, John Wooden, the statue outside of Mackey Arena. It's going to be a big-time environment. One of the better things I love about this season is getting the Bruins coming back to Mackey Arena.
That is going to be very cool. Obviously, a Purdue team that's going to be picked towards the top of the Big Ten, no doubt. Indiana will be as well, and a lot of that has to do with what they've done in the portal. We'll talk about that in a second. But in addition to Purdue, they get Ohio State and Penn State as their 2 plays. I mentioned the portal. They have the highest-ranked portal class in the country per 24/7 Sports. Malik Renew, Mackenzie Mbako are back. This is a really good team on paper, Rafael.
I mean, they are loaded. And then you look at it, this is one of the things I think the conference got right when they did the schedule, is that the 2 plays is still the rivalry game.
Yes.
So Indiana, they still get Purdue twice. Michigan still gets Michigan State twice. I love that. You got to keep the rivalries going. But you look at Indiana on paper, you think Omar Ballo, you think Luke Goody, Miles Rice, the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, going along with the freshman Bryson Tucker. And I know Indiana fans were mad about losing Liam McNeely going to UConn, but Bryson Tucker is a dog. He can play the 3 to 4. He can play some guard. They're going to be loaded there to get with Trey Galloway, what he was able to put together towards the end of the season in the point guard role, double-digit assists, 4 or 5 games to end the year. Mackenzie Mbako came into his own. If Indiana can put this together, if they can mesh in the locker room, they can get along, like each other, share the ball, Indiana's a clear-cut favorite to win the league. They have size, they have depth, and now they got a couple shooters. You think Luke Goody, an Indiana kid from Fort Wayne, going down to Bloomington, the family legacy that he has there. He is excited to have open opportunity to shoot the basketball. Luke being a 38, 39% shooter, he's going to get nothing but open looks. I like where the Hoosiers are. They are looking really good.
A lot to feel good about. And you mentioned 4 impact transfers, 3 of them coming over from the Pac-12. Let's turn the page to Ohio State, and the Buckeyes, obviously, with some turnover. They've got the Hoosiers as one of their 2 plays, along with Maryland and Nebraska. You've got Michi Johnson returning to Columbus. Bruce Thornton is back. This is a team that could take a jump, as Jake Diebler now the full-time head coach.
Yep, and Bruce Thornton leading the charge. Your leader is back, your point guard, the head of the snake. He makes them go on both ends of the floor. He's going to be the guy with the basketball in his hands, but I love what Coach Diebler has done in the portal. You look at a guy, Michi Johnson, came out of high school a little bit early, didn't go well at Ohio State, transferred out, figured it out, and now he's coming back. This is another guard that can go along with Bruce Thornton and really put pressure on the defense. Both of those tough, small guards, they can make shots, they can play in the mid-range, they can shoot their little floater shots. You think Aaron Bradshaw, 7-footer coming over from Kentucky, was one of the better high school players in his class, a straight rim protector, a finisher at the rim, and then 2 players I look to break out next year in their sophomore year. Because you think about your growth as a college player, you're going to make the biggest jump from your freshman to sophomore year. You look at Devin Royal, really emerged last season towards late when Coach Diebler took over the program, and Tayson Chapman. Tayson Chapman didn't get enough opportunities this year, but Tayson Chapman can score the basketball. He can make shot after shot. He'll take some bad ones, but he'll make some bad ones, and it'll look good enough to where Coach will keep him going.
Program that's got some momentum, no doubt. Diebler obviously 8-3 with him at the helm. Down the stretch there, got him that full-time job, and a lot of excitement there in Columbus. Now, they did lose players in the portal, among them Roddy Gale, who is now in Ann Arbor. 2 plays for the Wolverines, Michigan State, Purdue, and Rutgers. Really good portal class for Dusty May. Vlad Golden from FAU, Danny Wolf from Yale. Chance to make a significant move quickly in his first year.
And I love Roddy Gale. I think Roddy Gale is a tremendous player. I think he's a 3-level scorer. He can make threes, get to the basket and finish, get to the free throw line. But I hate that we're at the point in college basketball where we are going to our rival school. You look at Ohio State, you look at Michigan, they hate each other. But now Roddy Gale headed to Michigan. I think he's going to do wonders for that backcourt. You think Vlad Golden, big fella down low. They're bringing in a lot of transfers. I like the freshman, Justin Pittman, Scottie Pippen's son. I think he's going to be fabulous as a freshman. But for Michigan, it's all about building this first year. For Coach May, building his culture, getting things set right. So next season, and not just next season, but this year as well, when you bring in so many guys, you want to establish who you are. That's why I love the addition of Golden, someone that's been with them, someone that's been around them, not just through the good times, but when they were losing as well. So when things kind of get off rails, if they happens to this year for Michigan, they have a guy in the locker room. When coach is yelling at everybody, when coach is on everybody tough, they have a guy that's going to say, no, this is our guy. He loves us. He trusts us. And that's just big in the locker room. But I think Roddy Gale, Reuben Jones, and those guys, I think they have enough to compete.
The beauty of this now is you can put your culture in place, and I hear what you're saying, but you can also win right away, right? With the portal. And clearly Dusty May did some very good work there, and they need to make massive improvements. Again, this was a team that finished last in the Big Ten for the first time in 57 years. You were mentioning earlier, we were talking about Purdue, and you were mentioning them taking on UCLA. The Bruins, 2 plays for them are the other 3 new members, Oregon, USC, and Washington. They got 4 of their top 5 scorers back. They have 6 portal commitments. Crazy to think Mick Cronin's team would be down for long if like the way that this sets up.
Yeah, you think about some of their portal commitments. 4 of their transfers are averaging 13 or more points at their previous stop. That means they got dudes that can score the basketball, and that's led by Sky Clark, a guy that was at Illinois, transferred to Louisville, and now he's going out to UCLA. I watched Sky Clark a bunch since he was 14, 15 years old. He can score the basketball. He can score no matter what is going on in the game. He can make threes. He can score at the rim. He can get teammates involved. And when you bring in that many guys that can score the ball, that were maybe their first or second option at their previous school, it's all about getting those guys to coexist, getting those guys on the same page, letting them know early who the guy is on the team. I think that can get figured out. I look at a guy, Kobe Johnson, going to be one of the better glue guys across the Big Ten, transferring in from a rival USC, but a guy that was already 2-time Pac-12 all-defensive team. He's going to be able to guard the 1 through the 3. He's going to be able to make open shots. If UCLA can put it together offensively, you know what Mick Cronin does defensively, toughness, tough as nails, going to fit right into the Big Ten. It's going to be about the offensive end. I think that's going to be led by Sky Clark.
They did have 6 players transfer out, but none of them major contributors. So the portal for them was a huge net gain. They got some really good pieces there. USC, their crosstown rival, who you were talking about, Eric Musselman taking over for the Trojans. Same for all the new schools. Again, and we're going to say this a few times. They have the other 3 as their 2 plays. Massive roster turnover, as you would expect. 9 players coming out of the portal. Kind of tough, honestly, Raphael, to figure out how all this is going to fit together.
Yeah, all I know about USC right now, they have Terrence Williams, a great glue guy, a guy that can go in the locker room. He can gel guys together. And when you have 9 transfers like Penn State did last season, you need guys that are in the locker room that are people that put people together, guys that are hanging out with every group of people, guys that are hanging out with the freshmen, guys that are hanging out with the fifth years, guys that are hanging out with the sophomores. I think Terrence Williams can be that guy. I look at a kid, Liam Campbell. He's going to be a freshman. He's ranked in 158 in his high school class. I think that's wrong. I think Liam Campbell is a bucket. I think he is a true baller. He's 6'4", about 200 pounds. He can knock down threes. He can play off the screens. He can handle the basketball. I think he's going to be a freshman coming into the Big Ten that we all take notice to early. You look at Desmond Cloud, 6'5", averaged around 17 points at Xavier. He's going to be their go-to guy. And if they can get guys like Liam Campbell up to speed early and quickly, you give me 2 guards, 2 big guards that can score the ball in the backcourt. All I need is some play-hard players, some guys that can knock down open shots and rebound the ball, and that gets me in the game to at least compete.
Will be a lot of opportunities for those faces to contribute. And again, we know Musselman's track record. They're going to be good.
Yep.
They're going to be good quickly. We'll see whether or not it happens next year. More schedule talk ahead. Lots more interesting ones to talk through. Can Rutgers and Maryland bounce back? We're going to look at what's ahead for Tom Izzo and the Spartans as well. Keep it here. Back on Big Ten today. Here's what's ahead schedule-wise for Michigan State. Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota are the 2 plays. They lost a lot. Tyson Walker, A.J. Hoggard, Malik Hall, but Jay Nakins is back. Good player out of the portal in Frankie Fidler from Omaha. Nice recruiting class. They'll be fine.
They will be fine. You look at Coach Izzo. It is Coach Izzo. Again, he's bringing in a top 20 recruiting class. You think Jace Richardson, son of Jason Richardson, I think that is going to be so cool to watch Coach Izzo coach one of his former players' sons. You think about it, it's almost like his grandpa a little bit. But I love Jace Richardson. He can really shoot the ball, dynamic athlete in the open floor. Pairing him up with Cohen Carr, that's going to be big-time athleticism on the floor. I think Xavier Booker is going to make a big step into this season, going to add some weight onto that frame, going to be that player that we all know he could be. Trey Holloman is going to make that step into his junior season. Carson Cooper is going to be fine. I think Jay Nakins, his ability to go from a piece of the team to being the guy is going to be huge. He's going to really have to work on his ball handling skills, being able to break the defense down. Jeremy Fears, his health after the leg shot wound, I really wonder how that's going to affect him. His game was based off of his athleticism. But I do love that Coach Izzo went into the portal, went against his rules, got Frankie Fidler, a guy that averaged 20 points a game at Omaha to kind of replace the scoring of Tyson Walker a little bit. But I think it's just going to come down. If Jaden Akins is off, this team is going to be off. If Jaden has a good offseason, goes into the next year confident as a guy that we all know he can be, I think Michigan State is going to erase all of those things we were saying last season and be the team that we thought they should be going forward.
Looking to make it to their 27th straight NCAA tournament. I like their chances there.
Yes.
Rutgers trying to get back to the NCAA tournament after a down year. Michigan, Penn State, Purdue are the 2 plays. This is a fascinating team. They lost a lot in the portal, but Jeremiah Williams is back. You have the second highest ranked recruiting class in the country. Got a couple high-scoring transfers. I mean, there is a lot to like here, Raphael.
And I'm saying it right now, Rutgers is my favorite to win the Big Ten. I said it early to end last season, but you look at Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, I know they're freshmen. I know they're going to struggle early. They're going to have to go through their lumps, but these guys are real deal. These two guys are NBA players. These are first-round draft picks, and Dylan Harper may have the most confidence out of any freshman guard coming into the Big Ten since D'Angelo Russell, and he came into the league on fire. I think Dylan Harper has that ability. Ace Bailey at the 4 or 5 position, 6'9", 6'10", can make threes, can play off the dribble, get to the mid-range, can dunk on you at the rim, gets to the free throw line, plays as hard as he can every single time down the floor. You think one of those big guys like Clifford Moore, you think Muat Mag, give him an offensive game, and then you have Ace Bailey. They're bringing in guys that are averaging 16, 17 points a game. You think Tyson Acuff, coming from Eastern Michigan, 22 points a game. All he needs is open shots. All a guy like Jordan Barg needs is open shots, average 17 points a game at Merrimack. You give those two guys open looks off of Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, it is going to be money. You think of Tyson Acuff. Last 2 seasons, he scored 1,000 points. You give him a little bit of help. You make him your third option. Think of your third option as a guy who's averaged 22 points a season last year. I mean, I think Rutgers is going to be cooking with gas. Jeremiah Williams is a certified dog on both ends. Jeremiah Williams, Dylan Harper, along with Tyson Acuff, best backcourt in the Big Ten. I'm calling it now. I am all in on Rutgers.
Wow, it sounds like you are.
Yes, I am.
And again,
I'm a big fan.
it's a eminently defensible point of view. I mean, there is a ton of talent on that Rutgers roster, a team that will, I would say, almost certainly start the season ranked after missing the NCAA tournament a year ago. Maryland, they get Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State as the 2 plays. Interesting team. Julian Reese is back. You have a big-time recruit in Derek Queen, who I know you love, top 25 portal class. This feels like a bounce-back year.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I do love Derek Queen. And, I don't get into the rankings. I don't get into 5 stars or 4 stars, but I've watched Derek Queen play a bunch. I call a few of his games. When Derek Queen is locked in, he is a 20-10 guy. He's a walking double-double. He can score it. He can pass it. He's a guy that can have 18 points, and you think he has a bad game. He is that effective. He is that talented. It's a do-it-all type of big man. You think Juju Reese, he is back. I think Julian Reese is going to take a huge step. I don't think he took the step that he wanted to last season. I think this year he'd be the best 5-man in the Big Ten. You think of Deshaun Harris-Smith, a McDonald's All-American 2 seasons ago. He's going to take a jump. And the guy I look at, if Jacoby Gillespie can come into Maryland and be effective, if he can come in and make shots early on in the season, I really like what Maryland presents. You think of Selton Miguel shooting at 39% from 3 at UCF. I really love what Maryland did in the portal, and I love Derek Queen.
This team was a 12 seed in the Big Ten tourney a year ago. It's hard to imagine Kevin Willard having back-to-back down years. And as you said, nice roster composition there. Let's focus on Illinois. They've got Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Michigan State as their 2 plays. A lot of comings and goings. Terrence Shannon Jr., Marcus Damask, Coleman Hawkins all gone. They've added some solid portal pieces. They like their freshmen. A very intriguing team.
Yeah, and I like Morez Johnson as well. Their freshman coming in, a top 30 kid from Illinois. I think he's a guy at 6'9", is physically ready. I think if he's going to come in with the mindset, not just to play, but to start, I really like his chances on being on that all-freshman team. But you look at Illinois, losing 6 guys from an Elite 8 team is tough. And you think of the guys that they lost, it was going to be their turn this season. They were going to have the opportunity. That's the side of the portal that I can't get with. Guys just are not waiting their turn. But Illinois, they went out in the portal. Coach Underwood beautifully brought in Kylan Boswell, a guy that's from Champaign, highly talented recruit going to Arizona. I think he's going to be effective. Trey White will be really good coming from Louisville. But it's all about getting those guys to buy in early. 6 new guys are going to have to come in and really not just come in and play, but come in and affect the game. Because you lose Terrence Shannon and Marcus Domax, maybe come not, maybe not. But if he's out, you're losing 40 points a game that you have to replace in a hurry. I do love Kylan Boswell, but he wasn't the scorer that we know he could be at Arizona. If he's not prepared to come in and average 14, 15 points a game, Illinois could go from being in the Elite 8 to maybe struggling to find their way.
You mentioned Damask. There's some talk that he's trying to figure out a way maybe to get another year of eligibility, so we'll see. That would change the equation dramatically, I'd say, for Illinois. Oregon was a tourney team a year ago. Again, They face the other 3 new schools as their 2 plays. They got 3 highly regarded transfer commits. Dane Altman, outstanding coach. What do you think of the Ducks coming into the Big Ten?
Man, if they are able to get Dante back, I mean, he's fighting for another year of eligibility. This is a guy that averaged 17-9 last season on a tournament team. That's their best player. That is their guy. They get him back, Oregon will be cooking. Because you look at some of their sophomores, I love Kwame Evans. I've been following Kwame Evans since he was in high school. He's a guy that's going to have a jump as a sophomore. He's going to be in double-digit scoring. He's going to be close to 8-9 rebounds a game. You look at Jackson Shelstad, as a freshman, averaged 13 points a game. You give me those 3, then we start. But then you add in TJ Bamba from Nova, a guy that's shot the ball over 38% from 3 in his career, going to make open shots. Raheem Moss averaged around 16, 17 points a game at Toledo. You think it's Brandon Angel, averaged 13 points a game at Stanford. They brought in enough guys to compete, but if you bring back Dante in the middle of all of that, I think Oregon will be right again, another tournament team competing to win the Big Ten.
I figured to be right there in the mix, and again, just a really good coach who understands how to get a team to the tourney. Washington, they are coming off a rough year. They have a new head coach in Danny Sprinkle coming from Utah State. They face the other 3 West Coast schools, again, as their 2 plays. Still building the roster, but a couple of good portal commits. Makai Mason, a nice player.
Yep.
What do you see there?
And DJ Davis is a really good player from Butler, average around 13, 14 points a game. Again, I follow him for a few years now. He can shoot the ball. He can score. I look at a guy that's going to be a freshman in Zoom Diallo. He's committed to Washington right now. Not sure if he signed his letter of intent, but if they can get Zoom into those doors, I think he's going to be a future star out there on the West Coast. But I look at Coach Sprinkle. I look what he was able to do at Utah State, refilling their entire roster and taking that roster to the tournament and really competing at a high level, ultimately losing to Purdue. I think he's the coach to do it. You got to get coaches in these positions that have built rosters quickly before. And I talked to one of Coach Sprinkle's assistant coaches, Johnny Hill, who was one of my teammates. He said the offseason at Utah State, they were living in an Airbnb. They hadn't even looked for housing yet. So I'm sure Coach Sprinkle is still committing to those same philosophies, looking for players, not caring where he's living, as long as he can get the right players on the roster to compete in the Big Ten in his first season. 3
straight NCAA tournaments for him as a head coach, the year at Utah State, 2 prior to that at Montana State. Let's run through some others, give you the rest of the schedules. Iowa's 2 plays, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. A lot going to depend on whether Peyton Sanford stays in the draft. Owen Freeman coming back. Minnesota has Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin as the 2 plays. Dawson Garcia coming back, did lose a lot in the portal, though. Cam Christie, Elijah Hawkins, Pharrell Payne. Nebraska's 2 plays, Iowa, Maryland, Ohio State. A few nice portal pickups. Gavin Griffiths, Connor Esigian in conference. Rienk Mast, though, out for the year with an injury, so a tough blow there. How about Northwestern, Rafael? A lot coming back, but obviously they lose Boo Buie. Made a couple nice moves in the portal. Get Illinois, Iowa, Maryland as their 2 plays.
And I think everyone is going to be down on Northwestern. You think about losing Boo Buie, the all-time best player at the university, but I have high hopes for Brooks Barnhizer. I think Brooks Barnhizer will be an NBA player. He's a fabulous player, 1 through 3 at 6'7", can really score the ball. He's going to have to go from being one of the guys to the guy. I think Nick Martinelli is going to make a significant jump. They did a great job in the portal. There's still time left. I really like where Chris Collins is sitting with Northwestern right now, and I have extremely high hopes for Brooks Barnhizer.
Penn State, ace ball with Nick Kern coming back, did a good job of holding on to key players on their roster. 2 plays for the Nittany Lions, Indiana, Minnesota, and Rutgers. And finally, Wisconsin, losing A.J. Storr and Chucky Hepburn hurts, but Stephen Crowell, John Blackwell, Max Klesman all back. Couple double-digit scores in the portal, Ray fell for a team that will face Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota twice.
And when I think of John Blackwell, again, when you talk about freshmen making that jump into their sophomore season, now the basketball is going to be in his hands. There's no more Chucky Hepburn. There's no more Max Klesman or Connor Esigian. John Blackwell is going to control the offense. He's going to be that prototypical Wisconsin point guard. Think Jordan Taylor, Trayvon Jackson, Bronson Kanan, that we all fell to love.
It should be a ton of fun. Look forward to covering all of it with you, Rafael Davis. Good stuff. Dramatic conclusion of our show coming up next. Quick look at what's ahead on the diamond this weekend. That is coming your way on Big Ten Today. A full slate of Big Ten softball matchups tonight as we enter the final weekend of the regular season. Northwestern currently leads Michigan by half a game in the standings. You can see them take on Indiana at 5 Eastern on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. That'll be followed by Nebraska, Minnesota at 7 Eastern. Wildcats, Wolverines, the two teams that still have a shot at the title. Big Ten baseball has 3 weekends remaining in the regular season, but the race at the top just as tight. Purdue and Illinois are tied at 11-4, just a 1-game lead over Nebraska, Indiana, and Michigan. They're 10-5. You can see all but one of these games tonight on Big Ten Plus. Again, a reminder, Lacrosse, the championship games are here on the Big Ten Network tomorrow. The women at 5:30 Eastern, the men at 8 Eastern. Enjoy the weekend. I'm Dave Revson. Thanks so much for watching.